Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's update on Hurricane Idalia. So, Hurricane Idalia has made landfall in the Big Bend of Florida, and as of 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Wednesday, August the 30th, Hurricane Idalia has maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, a minimum central pressure of 950 millibars, and north-northeasterly movement at 18 miles per hour. So, looking at the latest Zoom Earth satellite imagery and Cone 4 Hurricane Idalia, Hurricane Idalia made landfall at 7 a.m. this morning as a Category 3 hurricane with 120 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, and briefly became a Category 4 hurricane last night with 130 mile per hour winds. As of 7:50 a.m. Central Time, August the 30th, Hurricane Idalia is situated over the Big Bend of Florida between Tallahassee and Gainesville, west of Lake City, and going into 1 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, we're going to remain a 100 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane just to the northeast of Valdosta, Georgia. And this is going to remain a hurricane as Idalia crosses through Savannah this afternoon and evening, even through Charleston overnight. And by 1 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning, 70 mile per hour tropical storm about to move offshore to the east of Charleston and then to the south of Wilmington. By Thursday 1 p.m. Central Time, a 60 mile per hour tropical storm moving offshore to the east. By Friday 1 a.m. Central Time, 60 mile per hour tropical storm moving to the east-southeast. By Friday 1 p.m. Central Time, a 50 mile per hour tropical storm curving to the southeast, crossing the path of Hurricane Franklin by Saturday 1 a.m. as a 50 mile per hour tropical storm, curving to the east-southeast once again by Sunday morning as a 50 mile per hour tropical storm, and then by Monday morning, a 50 mile per hour tropical storm about 100 miles to the southwest of Bermuda. So looking at the latest interactive map for Watches, Warnings, and Advisories, there are too many warnings, watches, and advisories to really see the colors, but the most important one I'm going to be showing you is the extreme wind warning that's in effect across portions of the Big Bend of Florida. So looking at this extreme wind warning, until 11:15 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. At 8:08 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, National Weather Service Doppler radar and service observations indicated extreme winds associated with the eyewall of Hurricane Idalia were moving on shore 9 miles east of Perry, moving northeast at 35 miles per hour. This is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. Locations impacted include Madison, Lee, Lakebird, Mosley Hall, Hopewell, Cherry Lake, Hamburg, Hanson, Pineda, and Shady Grove. So if you are in this extreme wind warning, make sure you are seeking shelter in an interior room or basement, as these are tornadic-like winds associated with the eyewall of Hurricane Idalia. And meanwhile, we have hurricane warnings through Tallahassee, through Valdosta, through Gainesville, Florida, through just west of Ocala down through Tampa, tropical storm warnings in effect down through Sarasota, Fort Myers, to Orlando, Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, and then we have a storm surge warning from Port Charlotte through Bradenton, Tampa Bay, through Cedar Key, up through the Big Bend of Florida, through Apalachicola, and then tropical storm watches, no warnings, extend well inland into central Georgia in areas like Dublin, Swainsboro, and Macon, and then hurricane warnings along areas like Savannah, Brunswick, extending into Charleston, as well as storm surge warnings along coastal Georgia and the Carolinas, tropical storm watches in Columbia even, and then tropical storm warnings in Wilmington, through the Outer Banks, and even a storm surge warning and watch in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, as Hurricane Idalia is lashing the southeast with major impacts as we speak. And looking at some of these other alerts, we got flash flood watches across most of western Florida through the Florida Panhandle, across most of southeast Georgia, most of South Carolina, most of North Carolina. And then we do have a flash flood warning where the eyewall of Idalia is situated around Madison, flash flood warning in effect for Madison and Perry. And then we gotta talk about the tornadic threat. We have a tornado warning, actually. We have a tornado warning near Dade City and a tornado warning near Arcadia, Florida. If you live in these areas and you're watching the video, make sure you are seeking shelter. There are tornadic storms in your area from the rain bands of Idalia. Meanwhile, a tornado watch is in effect from Tampa through Ocala, through Jacksonville and Orlando, across southeastern Georgia, through Brunswick and Savannah. So, we're going to be timing out the tropical storm and hurricane force winds over the next several hours across the southeast in the next part of the video. So looking at Zoom Earth once again, we are seeing hurricane force wind gusts, or tropical storm to hurricane force wind gusts across Tallahassee through most of the Big Bend of Florida. Going into the next several hours, we're going to be seeing tropical storm to hurricane force wind gusts moving into southeastern Georgia near Valdosta and Albany. And then tropical storm force winds are going to impact Savannah around 2 to 6 p.m. this evening. And then as Idalia moves through Charleston, tropical storm force winds there and also across Augusta, Columbia, Sumter, and Florence by 9 p.m. Central Time this evening. Going into midnight, tropical storm force winds continue across South Carolina. Going into the overnight, as Idalia moves offshore, we're going to start to see the tropical storm force winds move across much of North Carolina. And then eventually, as we go into tomorrow afternoon, tropical storm force and hurricane force winds will move offshore from the Carolinas. So next, timing out the rainfall from Hurricane Idalia. First, taking a look at the current radar on Zoom Earth, we have a massive rain shield and extraordinarily heavy rain across areas of the northern Big Bend of Florida, with the eyewall of Hurricane Idalia, moderate to heavy rain in Tallahassee, Valdosta, Albany, up through Savannah even. This is a massive, incredibly large rain shield into Macon and into Charleston, outer bands all the way up to Wilmington, and then outer bands impacting central Florida still. From Idalia, as this is just an incredibly large storm producing a massive area of rainfall moving into the southeast. And timing out the future of this rainfall, the rainfall is going to move across central Georgia, extremely heavy rain over the next 6 to 12 hours through the Carolinas by 4 to 5 p.m. and then across areas like Columbia, Florence, Fayetteville, Greenville, Wilmington as we go into the overnight tonight. Exceptionally heavy rain across eastern North Carolina through the early morning tomorrow, and then the rain is going to mostly be done by noon tomorrow, even in the Outer Banks. So looking at the latest rainfall projections from the Weather Prediction Center, looking at an additional 1 to 2 inches across the Florida Peninsula from Jacksonville through Orlando in the light green, southeast Georgia, and then the dark green around Tampa Bay through Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington, an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain in the yellow, 4 to 6 inches of rain across south, central, southeast Georgia, central South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina, then 6 to 10 inches of rain. This is where a major flooding threat is going to be in place from Tallahassee through near Augusta, through southeast South Carolina, southeast North Carolina. In the orange, make sure you're making your flash flood preparations if you live especially in the orange area. Looking at the Weather Prediction Center's Flash Flood Outlook for excessive flooding rainfall, we're maintaining a moderate risk from Tallahassee through central Georgia, through much of central southeastern South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina, including Tallahassee, Florida, Augusta, Georgia, Wilmington, and Hatteras, North Carolina in the red, a slight risk of flooding in the yellow, including Tampa Bay, Charlotte, and Raleigh, and a marginal risk in the dark green, including Montgomery, Atlanta, and Jacksonville. Now, looking at the storm surge forecast, extreme storm surge is ongoing across the Big Bend of Florida, where 12 to 16 feet of storm surge is forecasted and likely ongoing from Wakulla, Jefferson County to Yankeetown. 8 to 12 feet of storm surge from Ochlockonee River and then across Yankeetown through Chassahowick, 7 to 11 feet of storm surge, and then 5 to 8 feet of storm surge in the Orange area, and then 6 to 9 feet of storm surge between Chassahowick and Accolade River, and then through Tampa Bay, 4 to 6 feet of storm surge, middle of Longboat Key through Englewood, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge, from Englewood to Bonita Beach, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, from Bonita Beach through East Cape Sable, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, and then along the eastern coast of Florida, from Flagler through Volusia County line through mouth of the St. Mary's River, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, through St. Catherine Sound, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, through South Santee River, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge, through Beaufort Inlet, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, through Ocracoke Inlet, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, and up through the Outer Banks, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge from Hurricane Idalia. So life-threatening storm surge across the Big Bend of Florida. Looking at the latest hurricane and tropical storm force wind probabilities. So these are the hurricane force wind probabilities, and I'm going to say right now, I think the National Hurricane Center is underdoing these probabilities, only giving about a 30 to 80% chance across central Florida and southern Georgia, where hurricane force wind gusts are already occurring. So hurricane force wind gusts are going to occur across southeast Georgia and southern South Carolina, despite what the map is saying, in my opinion. And looking at the tropical storm force wind probabilities, this is more of an accurate representation, where tropical storm force winds are guaranteed from Tampa Bay through Jacksonville through Tallahassee, southeast Georgia, southeastern South Carolina in the purple colors, and nearly guaranteed in the dark red colors. And timing out the tropical storm force winds, the beginning of the tropical storm force winds, Wednesday 8 a.m. across areas from Jacksonville through Valdosta, Georgia. This afternoon 2 p.m. across areas like Savannah, Georgia. And then by 8 p.m. this evening across areas like Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. By Thursday 2 a.m., tropical storm force winds will begin in Wilmington. And then going to push offshore through Thursday. We could see tropical storm force winds impacting Bermuda by Friday evening even. So thanks for watching this briefing on Hurricane Idalia. Make sure you're preparing for major flooding, very strong winds, and storm surge if you live across the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. Please stay safe and have a wonderful day, my friends.